Assalamu alaikum. May the peace and the blessing of Allah be with you. With you today is Amani Shalabi. Welcome to my podcast, Hidden Jewels of the Quran. Reflections on the Holy Book based on our common inner experiences, integrating spirituality with psychology, science, philosophy, and ethics. Is anger always a bad or evil quality? And where does it come from? Does it always come from the lower self, from the ego? Or can it come from the higher self? Can anger be holy or divine? Is there righteous anger and sinful anger? To contemplate this question, let us explore the lives and the actions of the prophets. May the peace and blessing of Allah be upon them, who were sent as guides to humankind, to see if they felt angry and how they handled their anger. Did they just vent their anger? Did they keep it within, boiling until it exploded? Did they carry it as heavy weight? Did they use their anger to destroy or to reform? It was narrated by Abu Mas'ud that once he was beating his slave when he heard a voice from behind him saying, "Abu Mas'ud, Allah has more power over you than what you have over the slave." That was the voice of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. He was described as angry, and anger could be seen in his face as it turned red, and it also showed in the tone of his voice. There are few other stories in which people described how they sensed the Prophet's anger from his body language, from his face, and from the tone of his voice. Similarly, we could see how Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam drove the sheep and oxen with their owners outside the temple. He poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things away. Don't make my father's house a house of trade." We see Prophet Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, after many years of tolerating his people, he eventually prayed against them. We can also see Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam getting angry at the Egyptian soldier who was mistreating an old poor slave man. Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam also got angry at his brother Harun when he thought he permitted his people, or he didn't prevent them from worshipping a calf made of gold. He smashed the calf and threw it in the sea. We see Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam destroying the idols of his people. All of these stories show that prophets, who are our examples and role models and guides, they felt anger, as it is a common natural human emotion. Yet we can notice that their anger was for just causes, not for selfish, lowly causes, not for worldly gains. Their anger was for something greater than themselves. Does this mean anger can be justified at times? For example, what if it was the slave girl herself who was beaten, stood for herself in anger, and confronted her owner the same way the Prophet ﷺ did? What if it was an ordinary man who spoke truth to power, as Jesus ﷺ did? What if one spoke to his father like Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ did, or spoke rough to his brothers or sisters, as Prophet Musa ﷺ did speak with Harun? If we truly know that prophets ﷺ were also ordinary people, then perhaps we could accept that anger can be considered a virtue at times. It is through conflicts that transformation and self-growth can happen, as well as social reform. As Allah says in 2:251, were it not for Allah restraining the people, some by means of others, the earth would have gone to ruin, but Allah is gracious towards mankind. So Allah restrains people by means of others, as the ayah says. A peaceful conflict resolution does not mean that the people in the conflict will not express their feelings of hurt and anger, but it means they will also listen to the other side and reach solutions. And it means that they will not let their emotions rules over others and transgress over others. In fact, it was found in studies that when rational peaceful solution is proposed without allowing the emotions to be expressed and released, such peace will not be sustainable. We have to first heal our emotional wounds and release it in order to reach a peaceful resolution for our conflicts. But we have to find healthy ways to do so. We also have to recognize that in some cases, even after exhausting all means to resolve a conflict, it may not be resolved. In such case, coexisting and agreeing to disagree can be the resolution itself that is needed. For example, the Prophet ﷺ had to migrate to another land, letting Quraysh be or coexist along his own existence, saying, as the Quran says, to you is your belief or way or religion, and to me is my belief, my way, my religion. The problems arise from one side trying to impose his way or her way on another, or trying to control another. We have to recognize we can't always change people's minds, but we can change ourselves and do what is good and just for us, and taking their well-being into consideration as well, and their freedom of choice. You are listening to Hidden Jewels of the Quran. If we merely just judge our anger or feel bad about it or resist it and try to suppress it, is as bad as being impulsive about it and exploding with it. We have to find the root causes and understand our anger, and only from there can we find a cure. So we have to be able to recognize that we may get angry for just causes, but many times we can also get angry for selfish desires or for worldly gains or lowly causes or for confused causes. So there is wisdom in anger if we understand it correctly. It's a symptom for something deeper that we need to confront in ourselves. When we learn how to recognize if our anger is divine or it is coming from the ego or from the lower or lowly desires, anger can become fruitful or a tool for transformation of self, of relationships, and society. When we learn how to manage anger as we understand it, and how to express it or release it in healthy ways, that can be more constructive than destructive. If we just become impulsive, acting upon our anger without really contemplating it and understanding it, anger can destroy either self or another human being or even the whole society. So we have to understand our own anger and to try to understand the anger of others. Allah says in 3:134, those who give in prosperity and adversity, and those who restrain anger, and those who forgive people, Allah loves the doers of good. Forgiveness cannot be achieved without understanding. It will be only mere words and no reality or substance behind it. Forgiveness comes when we understand the root causes of anger, and only then can we forgive our own anger or the anger of another. The point is not to avoid getting angry altogether because it's almost impossible. The point is not to become subservient to someone or passive or indifferent like a robot. But the point is to learn to restrain our actions, examine the causes of our anger, and learn when and how we can express our anger. There are different causes for anger, and each cause has its particular specific remedy. False causes need to be removed, and just causes need to be examined carefully. For there are many causes for anger, and to each of them there is a particular cure. So first, we need to recognize and acknowledge when we are angry, because you cannot cure a disease without first diagnosing it, without acknowledging it. So we need to pay attention to the symptoms of anger in order to diagnose our state. Then we need to examine the cause of these symptoms, doing further examination, like when we are physically ill, we do some examination, x-rays or CAT scan or so. Similarly, when we feel angry and we feel the symptoms of anger, we need to look at the deep causes. We often start from the last step though. Before we even acknowledge we are angry, we act, then we suffer the symptoms, and then later we may examine our emotions or we may not. So we have it all reversed. We may just add to anger guilt and shame and resentment and build more anger, and we go in this vicious circle. So let us try to identify some of the symptoms of anger and then talk about some of the possible causes behind anger. You may like to personalize this practice after listening to the episode. by writing your own symptoms and examining your own causes in hope to find the right cure that is specific for you. So there are physical, emotional, rational, intuitive, and imaginal symptoms for anger. Some of the physical symptoms of anger is tingling or heart palpitations or tightening of the chest, increased blood pressure, headaches, pressure in the head, fatigue, feeling a lump in your throat, heat in your chest and face, making a fist and some stiff body language, crying, voices gets louder, and many other symptoms. Some of the emotional symptoms are having an anxiety, being passive aggressive, withdrawing, falling into depression or sadness, resentment, grudging, and many other symptoms. Some of the rational symptoms are always thinking about what upsets you, always having negative thoughts about yourself or others, making comparisons, and using if only then, because the Prophet ﷺ said if comes from shaitan. Comparison also comes from shaitan. Putting yourself down or someone else down comes from shaitan. So these are some of how your mind is engaged when you're angry in this type of negative thoughts, comparisons, and what if. Some of the symptoms that intuitively you could feel is a general sense of discontent, distress, and a feeling of being unfulfilled. Your needs is not fulfilled. Some of the imaginal symptoms are imagining scenarios in which you are attacked and how you're defending yourself, or imagining scenarios of argument that you're going to have with your spouse or loved ones and what you want to tell them, or anticipating to be attacked and having a readiness to defend yourself. Allah refers to that in the Quran in Surah 63, Ayah 4, when He says, "They are like propped up timber. They think every shout is aimed at them. They always expect to be attacked and they are ready to defend. They always consider there is an enemy out there that's trying to get them and they are ready to defend." That's the nature of the ego. After we explored some of the symptoms of anger, now we can look at some of the causes of anger. And again, there are physical causes, emotional causes, rational causes, and imaginal causes. Some of the physical causes behind anger is lack of sleep or lack of rest, exhaustion, illness, addiction to alcohol and other substance, lack of iron or certain minerals in the body. Also environmental causes such as feeling overheated. There are also genetic causes behind anger. If the brain doesn't react normally to serotonin, people will have difficulty managing their emotions. There are also emotional causes, such as a feeling of being hurt from past or present experiences, feeling disrespected, feeling belittled, insulted, feeling unloved or unappreciated, feeling you're treated unjustly, feeling controlled, feeling offended, feeling less than, feeling overburdened, feeling a loss of something precious or someone precious in your life, feeling insecure, feeling invested in something or someone without having a return or a reward. Some of the rational causes behind the anger could be having a financial difficulty, having poor social situation, where you experience the prejudice of other people against you or their racism or misogyny or other type of social ills. Other rational cause is feeling overwhelmed with demands or requirement on your time and energy and ability, having lack of resources, being intellectually unchallenged or bored can also be a cause of anger, believe it or not, because when we are bored and have nothing to do or intellectually unchallenged, we focus on small things and we project that negative feeling of boredom or intellectual lack or intellectual stagnation by being irritated and expressing anger and exploding in other people. Lack of creativity can also cause anger. There are also imaginal causes for anger. Living in illusion and unrealistic fantasies and unrealized dreams can make us feel frustrated and feel our inability to control the present or the future. Phobia of imagined danger or anticipating bad future. All of that can cause our anger or make us prone to be irritated and annoyed and explode in anger easily. You are listening to Hidden Jewels of the Quran. It would be impossible to mention here all causes of anger, but you can get the idea of how to look at your own cause of anger. For example, a lack of sleep or exhaustion can make you quickly get irritated and annoyed and stressed and explode in anger. So if you recognize that, then resting could be your remedy. If you are facing addiction, then you acknowledge that and you seek help. If it is a physical lack of one of the minerals in the body or vitamins in the body or hormones, then you need to balance that with natural remedies or even modern medicine if your illness demands that. If you have a chronic disease, you look for a support group for psychological and spiritual help to understand how your illness can be transferred to blessings by realizing your own inner strengths and beautiful qualities and by opening to receive the love and the help from outside. If your cause is emotional, such as feeling hurt or feeling disrespected or feeling treated unjustly or controlled, whatever it is, then you need to address it. You need to express that need in a healthy way. You need to also analyze if such emotional feeling comes from past experience, from a childhood experience that kind of clouded your perception, or does it have a real substance in the present situation? If you're facing rational causes such as financial difficulty, which adds more stress on you, then you can explain to your loved ones how you're going through this situation. You can find ways to reduce that anger by being proactive in finding a job or filing application, or in exploring how to learn new skills. Learning always brings joy to the soul. So learning a new skill or adding to your education to find a job could be a way out of that anger. Having poor social situation is a cause of anger, and you can join groups to make a difference. You can find supportive groups. You can write about it. You can protest about it. You can try to change the laws of the country, and you can even migrate if the situation becomes very bad. If you are intellectually unchallenged or are bored and you're focusing on all these small things, you could actually try to volunteer, to try to learn something new, to join a book club. You can release your anger and boredom by learning some type of artistic expression. You can be creative. Creativity can cure the anger. We also have to be honest and sincere and authentic with ourselves, looking at our fantasies and illusions, and if we have realistic expectation of life or of people or not, and are we taking steps to achieve our dreams or not. Because if we just fantasize and get disappointed because we have unrealistic expectations and we're not taking steps to achieve some of our dreams, then we become prone to feel angry and frustrated and disappointed and sad. And then we will project that on others. Do we suffer from a phobia, for example, from unexpected danger, or anticipating a bad future? Faith comes to help in such a situation. When we realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always takes care of us. He took care of us when we were helpless in the womb of our mothers, and He will continue to care for us and provide for us one way or another. When we have faith in Allah, when we know Allah, then we will feel more secure and more hopeful of the future. At the same time, we will be more realistic. We should also be willing to seek advice from experts. We seek therapy if it is an emotional cause, or we seek an expert in financial management if we are facing financial difficulty, or it could be through seeking an agency that facilitates finding jobs. It could be also through seeking the healing or the advice of a spiritual guide, teacher, or healer. If your tendency to get angry comes from being stressed at work or because you are preparing for a test, for example, make sure to take time to do something you love and enjoy so you can renew your state of peace and energy. If people can help you carry that burden and see if you can take times again for vacation, for rest, to do something you enjoy. Make sure to balance your time, as the Prophet ﷺ said. 1/3 of your time should be to take care of your soul, 1/3 to take care of your body, give your body the nutrition it needs, the rest it needs, and the exercises it needs. And then 1/3 is for your family, for social life, for community, and so forth. It is important to find something you could do alone and enjoy. People who have hobbies can become more healthy. Otherwise, we find ourselves dependent on others. We form a dependency and have a higher expectation of others to release us from our own stress and anger. This dependency can also take the form of sexual addictions or other types of addictions, and we become dependent on a substance to relieve us or on someone. But people are limited in their capacity to help us and relieve us. So we have to find, number one, faith, number two, a hobby or something we enjoy doing alone by ourselves. So look at your anger. Does it stem from being dependent on another and having high or unrealistic expectations of others? Does your anger stem from greed, from your desire to control another human life or people or the future? There are some human basic rights and needs, such as the need to be respected, the need to feel loved and appreciated, the need to be free, not controlled, to be understood, to have your burden shared, the need to be treated justly. All of these needs are legitimate needs, and if they are not met, of course we are going to feel angry. And the anger is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us reform the situation, reform ourselves, reform the society, reform our relationships. So we are allowed to express these needs and to pursue to fulfill these needs. So you are allowed to ask or demand respect, and to demand freedom, and to demand dignity, and to demand justice. You are listening to Hidden Jewels of the Quran. Have the courage to admit the root cause of your anger so you can take good care of it. And you have to be able to recognize whether it is coming from a legitimate need or from the ego. Have the courage to apologize when you recognize it is not coming from a legitimate cause or coming from your lower self, from the ego, such as when you are asking too much of someone beyond their capacity, or that you misunderstood them due to your childhood wounds, or that you were angry because you were physically stressed or restless, not because of something the other person did. We have to be able to acknowledge that and apologize for it, and watch that we will not fall into these mistakes again. We must also have compassion to forgive one another when we understand the root causes. If it is a legitimate cause, then that will help us to forgive. We have to be able to release our anger in healthy ways, in a wise, gentle, and polite way. It means that you will not show disrespect, belittle, or seek to control someone else. But it means you're going to express your needs clearly, passionately. So we have to find ways to manage our anger, such as going for walks, listening to calming music, dhikr, meditation, or to express it in art. Transform your hurt and pain to something beautiful. Some people who lose family members to violence or who experience hurt themselves start charity. They start a project to turn and help to heal others from the same hurt they got hurt with or from something else. And they find healing in doing so, as their feeling of worth increases, and they live for a purpose higher than themselves. They rejoice in seeing other people healed, and they honor their loved ones or their own hurt by doing these great actions. So that is a healthy way of expressing and releasing anger. We should also remember that most of our anger comes from misinterpretations and misperceptions of others' actions and words. So we must develop a deep way to listen, not to just hear and be impulsive, but to listen to others, especially with those with whom we have a conflict. So it is the way you express or channel your anger is what matters. You can talk passionately about what you need and believe, and you can also develop sincere listening skills to the needs of others by putting yourself in their shoes. We know that the Prophet's ﷺ wives talked passionately with him about their issues. We know that he also used to talk passionately when he was talking about social issues, but he never turned it to violence. He never belittled or disrespected or transgressed against others. There is the story of Prophet Musa that is mentioned in the Quran and how he got angry with his brother Harun. It's in Surah 20, Ayah 86, and I'll read now from the Quran. So Musa returned to his people angry and disappointed. He said, "O my people, did your Lord not promise you a good promise? Was the time too long for you, or did you want wrath from your Lord to descend upon you, so you broke your promise to me?" He said, "O Harun, what prevented you when you saw them going astray from following me? Did you disobey my command?" He said, "Son of my mother," now Harun speaking. Harun said, "Son of my mother, don't seize me by my beard or my head. I feared you would say you have caused division among the children of Israel and did not regard my word." Here we could see how Prophet Harun tried to diffuse the anger by first saying, "Son of my mother," reminding him with the deep connection between them, and then stating his case by saying, "I feared you would have said you caused division among the children of Israel and did not regard my word." So sometimes people will have good intention and they interpret things differently and they act differently than what we expect of them. But that does not mean they did it intentionally to hurt us, and we have to remember this. And here some people may ask, did Prophet Musa turn it violent or turn it physical with his brother Harun? Actually, it could be just a metaphorical expression that he was dragging him in the argument, in the anger, and Prophet Harun alayhi salatu wasalam diffused that anger by saying, don't drag me there. So, losing your cool from time to time does not mean you have an anger management problem. We all lose our cool from time to time, and that helps us to be humbled, to ask for forgiveness from others, and to be forgiving to others. It is when anger becomes constant irritability, rage, and anxiety that is uncontrollable and continuous that it becomes a problem. If you feel overwhelmed, have trouble organizing or managing your thoughts, or fantasize about hurting yourself or others, you could be experiencing an anger disorder. You are listening to Hidden Jewels of the Quran. There are many types of anger. According to psychologists, there is volatile anger, which involves sometimes spontaneous bouts of excessive or violent anger. There is chronic anger, which is prolonged and can impact the immune system and be the cause of other mental disorders. There is passive anger, which does not always come across as anger and can be difficult to identify. There is overwhelmed anger, which is caused by life demands that are too much for an individual to cope with. There is self-inflicted anger, which is directed towards the self and may be caused by feelings of guilt. There is judgmental anger, which is directed towards others and may come with feelings of resentment. You see, anger is coming from the blaming self, the level of the blaming self. And the level of the blaming self is a beautiful level, because without blame, we will not recognize our own errors or the errors of others. So it's a beautiful state or experience. It becomes an illness when it becomes chronic and we don't have a way out of it. We are stuck in self-blame all the time or in blaming others all the time. Unresolved anger issues lead to anxiety, which can have long-term effects on your life. Immediate effects of anxiety might include dizziness, rapid breathing, nausea, muscle pain, muscle tension, headaches, and the problems with concentration and memory. Such symptoms can make it difficult to perform routine tasks and can add to generalized anger about life. At that point, you need to seek help. Long-term anxiety can pose risks to your health and emotional state and well-being, so you should also seek help if such is the situation. Finally, we should learn to forgive our own anger as we manage it or cure it, and forgive the anger of others as we understand their causes. Or if we fail to forgive, at least we can coexist and live in peace, in separated from others, and let everyone be. Allah says in 4:148, Allah does not like uttering bad language outwardly unless someone was wronged. God is hearing and knowing. So yes, at times our anger may lead us to say bad words. But if our anger coming because we are wronged, then Allah will forgive these bad words. And when we know that, we can also forgive our own selves. We can also forgive others who use bad words to express their anger when we know their anger is coming from a legitimate cause. After all, forgiveness is the greatest cure. Thank you for listening. Please join me again in a new episode of the Hidden Jewels of the Holy Quran.